Hi, it's Sandra from SandraD Imagery, and I'm excited to partner with Photoshop and DxO Nik Collection. They're tools I've relied on for years to bring my creative visions to life. In this video, I'll show you how I use Nik Analog in my workflow to create a vintage, old-style look on one of my images. Let's dive in and have some fun with Photoshop and Nik Collection. This is an overview of Nik Collection where I'll be sharing some of my favourites. It's a large program that's got so many options for you that you can use in your workflow. I started to use Nik Collection when I was into this serious landscape photography, and I found it would give a different look to an image. I could tweak it or fine-tune it. Then when I started to move into composite imagery, I was still using Nik to give some different effects, adding fog, a glow, and all of the filters that are available in Nik Collection. Now that our style has changed and I'm working with AI imagery, I'm still using Nik Collection. Each one of us will have a different style, whether we're photography, whether we're doing composite imagery, or whether we're actually creating images with AI. What I'm sharing with you is just some of the techniques that I use and using the tool Nik Collection. It's up to you to play, experiment, and maybe just think outside the box a little bit on some of your imagery. Let's dive in and have some fun with Nik Collection. Nik works as a plug-in with Photoshop and Lightroom. For me, as a personal preference, I work with it in Photoshop, but you can use it in Lightroom if you do the majority of your work or processing work in Lightroom. I'm going to come up to Filter to access the Nik Collection, and I'm going to use Nik Collection 7, which is the latest version. Now, how I tend to break it down is with analog is where I like to go and play with the filters to get an arty or a grungy look or a classic camera, old-style camera look. And I use that quite a bit on my AI images lately. This image was actually created with AI, and I want to get a little bit of an arty look. Now, over on the left-hand side, you can see what I call the filters, and I like to make sure I've got all Nik so I can see them. Personal choice. You can put them into categories if that's what you like to work with. But as we scroll down, let's have a look. I've got Autochrome 2, and let's have a look at the colours and tones. Very old photograph, vintage. I do love it, but maybe I don't like the frame on that. And this is where I'll come over to the right-hand side and I'll scroll down and have a look at frames. And you can untick those frames. I'll just go into that checkbox and tick that off. Oh, maybe I like the frame and I can turn that back on. What I also can do is work with the film type. And so you've got subtle. Then if I click on that downturn triangle, you can actually choose some different tonings. Let's go here and see what it does. This one adds a little bit of what I call a graduated filter. Maybe I don't want that. The same thing, I can untick that and turn that off. I might like to now have a look what else is in the tools. You've got light leaks. So over on the left-hand side, it looks like there's a line there. Let's uncheck this and see what happens. Changes the colours, but it gets rid of that actual toning. So I quite like that. I'll turn that on. I can go in and change the bokeh style. I can extract a little bit more detail, brightness. I do encourage you to play with these tools on the right-hand side, and each filter that you apply will have different functions in that tool area. Let's go over and have a look at a classic black and white, and let's see what it does with this image. Again, it's given it that real arty look, and it may be a style that you like if you like working with black and white images. Let's scroll down a little bit further and go blue faded. And for me, I think, oh, I like that, but what can I do with that? And there's a few tricks that I'll do within Photoshop. So for example, let's go with blue faded. I'm going to come down to apply, and I'm applying that filter to that image. Now, while it's loading up, you'll actually see then the next layer, it tells you Nik 7 analog effects. And I like the grungy look in there, but maybe I want to lift the boat a little bit, get it a little bit lighter, because to me that's a feature within this image. So what I'm going to do is get my object selection tool. I'm going to just draw a square big enough around that boat. And I'm not going to be too fussed on the selection. I'm going to put that into a levels adjustment layer with a mask. And I'm just going to lift that boat a tiny bit using the mid-tone slider. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, and so that you can see that. Now let's turn that layer off and on. And it's given a different look, but it still has that arty look within the image. Let's delete those layers and let's have a look at some other effects in analog. I'll go up to Filter, Nik Collection 7, go Analog. I'm going to scroll down, and ones I do like quite often, I'll use them in my workflow, is a classic camera. And I'm going to go for 4 just for this image because I think it really suits this style. It's got a bleached look, but let's have a look at the tools over on the right-hand side. I can play with the extractor or the detail extractor, brightness, contrast. I can also now come down here where I call the texture overlays. You've got dust and fluff. If I click on that triangle, I can use scratches. So we'll go into scratches and I'll get what I call a look that's a bit more wet plate photography. Let's have a little look and see what it does. Hasn't changed it much. I'll go in and then I think, okay, well, it's not working what I want. I can see the scratches coming there, but maybe I need a little bit of a change. Organic. Let's come into organic and see what it does. And sometimes when you come in here, you go back to what it was, the dust and fluff. And I'm going to click on any one there, and I can adjust the strength if I want. Now, I may like the strength, but I don't like those black blotches that have come in. That's fine. You can easily remove those when you get back to Photoshop. Let's come down and have a look at another one, and a color cast. And I quite like that as well. Let's have a look at the tools on the right-hand side. Again, you can play with brightness, contrast, saturation. I can even add a control point. Now I'm going to click here and I'm going to click where I want the control point. And it puts a circle over an area that I want, and I can move that. So let's say, for example, I want to lift the tree trunk a little bit, give a little bit more of a brightness. I'm targeting the area that I want. Now I can make the circle smaller. I can come in, just target that, or I can actually make it bigger if I want. And this is what I might use to give a vignette around an object. So I want a vignette around this tree. And this is what I call, it's a selective area adjustment. Let's come in and play with contrast. Can I fiddle around with that? I might want to go and play. And this is where you just play. And it's about developing your eye and seeing what you want within your style. Let's make that just here now, over to the boat, if I want to highlight the boat and not the tree trunk. So let's come back, and I think that's exactly what I want. I can easily move that control point into different areas. What you can do with the control points is, for example, I can actually add another control point somewhere else in the image. So let's say I want it just here at the top of the branches. And again, you can play with the brightness, darken it down. You can go into saturation, contrast, luminance, you've got prominence and diffusion. So if I want to add a little bit more of a softness to that area, I can use diffusion. Again, it's all about playing. I'm going to click on apply, and let's have a look what it does to this actual image. What a change. Let's turn that layer off and on. Recapping, I used a filter that changed the whole image. It's a global adjustment. Then I went in and used control points on the tree and the boat to get a little bit of lightness or a bit more saturation. And so you break your image up into global and selective areas on your adjustments. There are a number of other filters in analog, and I encourage you to play. Thank you for watching, and if you like this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe. Have fun being creative.